know if we offered it just internally at first or not.
It was handled internal and external simultaneously.
I got you, okay.
Okay. The other items there, yard waste grinding, we used to get I call it a stipend, I guess, of $32,000 for handling yard waste, going on for years. MES proposed last year to eliminate that and come up with a different plan. We objected to that because it wasn't clear exactly what they're doing. They've come together with a proposal where they're going to take those funds and at the end of the year, looking at their budget and any, I'll call profits that they might make, and then distribute that amongst the counties. So we now have to cover the full yard waste costs ourselves. So that's where you see that increase, where we were getting,
They don't give that 32,000.
and they're taking
No.
that away.
So
Taking it away.
with the MERP agreement, there are certain things that are required to happen, and then there are things that are optional. This was an optional thing. And now that agreement has come to a conclusion, it's time to renegotiate for the future. We know that the mandatory or the core services will be offered, but the optional things have not been determined yet, and they're probably going to be different than what they had been in the past.
And that's for the grinding of the brush piles, right?
Yep, we used
Correct.
it for that.
It says yard waste, but it says brush piles, and that's, that's pretty expensive.
Yeah, because they bring a unit to do that. I mean, it's an MES unit. I know one time we were,
Do we still do it for the town of Chestertown?
We do it for the whole county.
yeah,
Well,
Anybody that
They have-
delivers to our piles,
the pile, right?
but
Gets it.
Chestertown don't have their own pile, they're hauling it
I
out.
think they're hauling it now, aren't
Hauling
they?
it out
I
there.
think so.
They initially had their own pile.
I know, because Rock Hall had that pile,
Right.
and that was done away with.
As long as they haul it to Nicholson,
Oh,
we
yeah,
grind it.
it's free if you
Right.
haul it there.
Yeah, so if they have a small pile that they, for their own purposes or whatever, they make their own arrangements for it. But yeah, the deal is it's got to come to Nicholson.
I
for-
got you, I got you.
Then I
I
mentioned,
remember when that number was $60,000 or so when we were doing down Rock Hall, Nicholson, Chestertown.
well, one of the things we figured out is how they were coming to their estimates of it. So we didn't have a lot of control over Rock Hall because it was spread out. So the guy goes there and he kind of makes an estimate of what he's gonna do. So now what Marty and his crew would do is get the nice compact pile and get it orderly, so now those measurements match up. And we found out we were saving a lot of money because they were overestimating. It's difficult to estimate that, but
Yeah.
now if we get an organized pile, and we're getting what we paid for now. So, because we had more control over where those piles were, how they were managed. All right, as I mentioned earlier, the anticipated penalties and fines for Nicholson that would accumulate over a period of time until the plant can go online. We built that into the budget rather than impacting the contingency.
And that's gonna be, the idea of that water treatment facility out there to Nicholson, if I understand it right, is to get rid of the iron in the water.
That's in the groundwater already.
That's in the groundwater already,
I know.
which the entire county's got
Well,
iron in the
particularly
water.
right there, go to Chesapeake Landing and draw water out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And look, you gotta go no further, I don't have to go no further but from Rock Hall, and we got iron in the water now there.
Yeah, yeah, the
So
conundrum.
we know this is never gonna end, we're never gonna get rid of all the iron.
Well, the treatment plant will remove the iron so that we don't have any penalties, but the iron's always gonna be in the groundwater.
Yeah.
The difference is the standard that's applied here with the NPDES permit is a statewide standard. It's not a regional thing. So they set this limit for iron in the water statewide. When you get over where we are, we got the iron in the water, literally you pump it out of the ground and put it in a creek, and you're violating a standard. And the only reason we're putting this water into the creek is because we had to build a treatment facility to take care of the VOCs in the landfill to keep them from migrating. So we went and did a good thing to take care of the VOCs, but as a result of that, we created another problem. So now we're fixing that problem.
If we're not sure we created.
Right.
Right. So it's a byproduct of pumping out and taking the VOCs out. And originally, if you remember, we had a problem with copper, pH, and iron. And we were able to change the monitoring point that eliminated the problem with the pH. Then we found out that we had fittings that were in the treatment system for the VOCs. We removed those fittings. The copper problem went away because of the corrosivity of the water was bleaching out the copper from the brass fittings and the copper fittings. That left us with iron, which was in the groundwater, so we couldn't do anything about that because we have to pump the groundwater out. So hence we're building basically a treatment system that we use at our water plants is going to be there to treat the water, get the iron out so that it can go into the stream. So that's the logic behind it.
And all that was because it was back when that was closed, I mean, when that was open, we never had, it doesn't have a liner in the
Not a
bottom
line
of it.
landfill.
And now, you know, newer landfills do, obviously. We capped it and
Mm-hmm.
covered it, but the bottom underneath was never a liner put in it. You can't put it in there now.
Right.
after the fact.
You would have to dig out the whole landfill and put a liner in and do it.
But that's gonna be a gift that'll keep right on giving.
I know, yep. Well, we even still have to do monitoring at Dunlin too, the other landfill.
And then when you don't feel like you're accomplishing anything because it's already iron in the water, really makes it even that much harder to accept.
I know.
Yeah.
And this project has been, since I got here, it's 5 years now, we're trying to get to this point, so. But I can see the goal line coming up, so we'll go from there. Capital items, you'll see the details in there, our roll-off truck. This is pulling off the containers. We need to replace her. She's got some age on her. I'm trying to think what was, she's a 2004 Peterbilt, 500,000 miles on her. So we want to get that replaced. And then,
Now you're really hurting my feelings when you put up there the estimated cost of $2.7 million just to treat that iron.
I know.
there at that landfill.
That's the cost of the land, that's not the operational
No,
cost.
that's just
No.
to treat that water.
That's what I'm saying, but that's not the operational
Right.
cost.
because we have to build a whole new plant for it. So, and it's the loan. It's not just construction, it's construction management, the design, all those kind of things that are in it. But it's a USDA loan, and we have all the red tape that goes with it, so be anxious to get that one under construction. And they have just one leased vehicle they'll be dealing with. Okay? Any more questions on that? Next one should be public landings. These are pretty straightforward. This setup is different accounts, that's why this shows up with that. Pretty straightforward. We have one employee, goes through Romy. Takes real good care of it. No capital expenditures proposed for FY '24. You see FY '25, Bogle's Public Landing Pier Replacement. We'll be looking at chasing after some DNR money for funding that, but that'll be in FY '25.
Most of it, just for my colleagues' benefit, most of this improvements that are made to these public landings, most of it is, or some of it is even 100% grant funded, isn't it? But like a larger project would be maybe 50 to 50%.
It depends on what they've got available. Bayside's gonna be the next one we talk about. That's under design, and that we had to chip in on that one because there's a limit. But these smaller projects, rebuilding a pier, putting rock, riprap in and things like that, usually they'll give us 100% on that. So it's waterway improvement funds. So we take advantage of that. We had a really good relationship with Sandy Pepe, who was with DNR. Fortunately, she's retired now, so we have to develop a new relationship. But they've always been very positive with us because of the number
I
of
always
landings.
said that's one area where little Kent County gets
Yes.
its share of the funds is because we have so many. I'd like 32 public landings. Not all of them are big usable, but some of them are just dead-end roads. But we do have some very nice ones that, and we get a chance to receive a lot of that, the funding that comes from that boat licenses and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, make use of it. So that's that. It's a good straightforward one. Any questions on that one? You look like you were in thought there. You good?
Just looking at some things.
Okay.
Good.
Bayside Landing is a unique one because we have a couple different departments that give input, so would you like to come forward, Jill? She doesn't really want to, but just in case there are any questions.
All right.
There I am, right there.
Yep.
All right, so, the first on this is, the lifeguards, of course, will be no longer outsourcing our lifeguard duties to the contract vendor. So this will be added personnel to, the lifeguards. And then as far as operations, the same thing, we'll need R&M services, which is a little about $3,395, because that outsourced company also took care of like just the general maintenance that we had there at the pools. And then recreational services will be no longer outsourced. And so those are like doing our swim lessons that we have down there to Bayside. As far as capital projects, what we do, we're asking for Bayside pool furniture, $1,500. So every other year, we flop and we ask for furniture at Bayside and Millington. And then the next year, we always ask for replacement furniture for our main pool at the community center. So this fiscal year, Bayside and Millington, we're asking for the pool furniture.
And the other capital project I mentioned earlier is replacing the piers and bulkhead for Bayside. That's under design, 90% design. That's been submitted to Army Corps of Engineers, because you got channel in there, and MD for permitting approval. So we're waiting on that.
How old are those piers now?
Well, we bought them, so I'm not sure how old they were before we
They're,
bought the thing.
Well, we've had them for,
Long time, I couldn't believe
Yeah.
it.
and see, it was actually a marina when we bought it. It was, shit, I forget what the name of it is. But it was there for a while. I mean, I'll bet you they're 30 years old or something, maybe. I don't know. I'm guessing now.
Yeah, I mean, we did some work, we found when we were looking at it that some of the electric lines were below the tide level, so we're replacing the electric on it. We're gonna get
Gives you
pylons.
A little bit of a heart
I know,
flutter.
That's not the only place that happens.
I know.
I'm sure,
It's just,
I'm sure.
you know, you worry about transient voltage and things like that.
Where is that project? We postponed that project for a while,
We,
didn't we?
we did for, and look, we,
Because I've
finally had
actually
to
had
move it.
some people ask me that have boats down there, when that's gonna,
yeah, we're gonna time the construction so that we're doing it when we're off-season, and then we'll have to some of the people that keep their boats there year-round, we'll have to work on making arrangements for some temporary, like some of the other piers, that they can move them to, they'd be off-season rates, and hold them there so that we can get the piers replaced and the
be
decking.
a lot easier for them to find a slip on off times
Yes,
than in the summertime. You might not be able to find slips for all of them, but
so the expectation is this fall, putting it out to bid and everything, hopefully get the permits and everything squared away and do that. But we'll have the new pylons, the lighted, and more modernist the way it is now, instead of just plug it into some receptacle that you know is underwater. So yeah, it'll be real nice once it's done. And I think we lose, I'm trying to think, it was 1 or 2 spaces, just because with the bulkhead moving out, the bulkheads come in on the sides there, so we lose a space. but we juggle it around to make sure, with the boat sizes and everything, you gotta make it work. But when you're replacing a bulkhead, you've gotta go out to,
About 18 inches
yes,
typically.
exactly. So you take 18 inches on one side, 18 inches on the other side, and it chops up a slip.
County paid $1.5 million for that whole place,
Is that what it is?
and the state gave us $1.2 million
Oh, okay.
towards that $1.5 million.
Is there, do you know if the pool gets a lot of use out there?
It doesn't get as much as other places, for sure, but,
I think Jill's hoping to
But Jill has
discontinue.
numbers, Parks and
Yes.
Rec keeps
Yeah,
numbers.
we keep a daily attendance. I actually have them with me, but yeah, the numbers
Okay.
are not very high out there using that pool.
That could be an operational discussion in the future, whether to keep it or not.
it's only about, what, 3 or 4 foot deep. I mean, it's a kiddie pool almost. It's,
Yeah.
The
5
deepest-
5 foot.
is it 5 feet?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the pool is the size of this area up here. I think it's smaller.
It's not as big as this room. I
That's
mean, you're
why
right.
it's small.
It's
Definitely,
just-
yeah.
It's a small one. And it was there when it was a marina. We inherited that when we bought it. And then the state actually paid, if my memory serves me, I think that the boat ramp, which is actually one of the nicest ones anywhere as you'll ever put a boat overboard, you can put 2 at a time. I think they paid for like 90% of the construction of that. The state did.
Okay. Yeah, they're always willing to help with the boat ramps, 'cause that brings more boaters in and
Right.
more registrations, so. So that's it with Bayside. While we have Jill captive, do we want to touch on open space or LPPI? Want to jump to that or come back to it?
That's fine. We have,
Building.
there's only Scott in between the two of you. And then
Okay.
with Jill, we have PNR, Program Open Space, and LPPI.
Yeah, I have the sheets for them, that's why.
But I would just, let's hold on that,
Okay.
and we'll come back to that.
All right, so the next one on the list would be then building maintenance.
I apologize, one more interruption.
That's all right.
Was that last slide there, it had under that Bayside public land, and you're attempting to do that this winter coming,
Yeah,
the construction?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I've had a couple people that have boats there ask me that question when it was gonna,
Yeah, we'll coordinate with them
Yeah.
when the time comes. Because once we get a contract, then we'll have a good idea what that window is and everything.
very good.
And I don't think there's any restrictions like we get with some of those areas, you know, with oysters or migrating fish or something like that, yeah. Sometimes that gives us some heartburn. Okay. All right. All right, building maintenance summary. We're not looking for as much capital this time because of the different repairs we've been very busy with this year. That's about that. And then the highlights. Custodial services, we'll see some increases in that contract. They've done a better job. We had one of those come to Jesus moments with them, and they've had staffing problems like everybody else has. But they've switched to where they have a person that's dedicated to a building rather than just having the crew move through. They tended to move through too quickly. Now the person is accountable for that building. And we've done our floor waxing repairs, things like that, seasonal stuff that's done. So it's improved. So we went back to them as far as a renewal. The costs are higher because they're hit with the minimum wage increases. They're going to get hit with their employees. So they built that into the contracts. You can see the increase associated with their R&M services. This is generally all the buildings that we're talking about now. Repair costs, a lot with HVAC systems, security systems issues. I know Jill, her front doors have been a continuing issue. They're custom type doors and just constant problems with fixing things with there, but it's just with things getting old.
Mike, I just had a question
Sure.
about the custodial service before we go too far.
Mhm.
I'm not familiar with why the counties, was it last year?
Yep.
Decided to contract out only certain buildings.
Well, we left the detention center off because of the security issues. That was the one that got left out. All the other buildings were included, but it was difficult to attract anybody because of having to have security. So what we do is, the detention center has one of our staff doing the maintenance, or the cleaning and stuff.
Because they have to clean and have
Yes.
time to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we've also, they've asked for the family center, a contract for them, so that's built into their budget that they'll be working on. HVACs, we have the long-term relationship we have with Johnson Controls. Last year, we signed a brand-new 5-year contract with them. It has increases built into the contract for each year, so that's been built into the budget for year 2 of the contract. Supply costs, just generally inflationary impacts there. Capital, the government center, we have 42 individual HVAC systems, so we're gradually over the year replacing 2 as they go. Typically, it's failed, hadn't failed yet, so we continue that process. And in the courthouse, again, another facility that has facilities that are way beyond their life cycle. A condensate boiler feed tank, but we need to replace that. It's rusted out, so it's leaking. We've done the epoxy, bubble gum, everything we can to plop it, but now it's time to replace that tank, so we've built that into the budget. Got a price from Johnson Controls. They're replacing 1 truck. And then you have the public safety complex budget that's built into that was provided by the architect for FY '25 with the scenario 2 process going through. Okay. And Pat can chime in too. We had a meeting with the bond counsel and the financial advisors in terms of bond issuance, starting that process to get that moving. That's that for that. Any questions? Basically, the reason it's thick is they budget for each building. So you'll go through that, and you'll see each building has its own little budget with that. But as things go, we move from one building to another with budget transfers as we need to with that. All right? Grounds maintenance. So, okay, got that. Continue effort, again, we did pretty good last year. The commissioners were very good helping us with some capital stuff in terms of tractors, replacement mowers, things like that. So we're in good shape this year in terms of capital items. Under the budget highlights and the grounds maintenance, we have our, if you've seen them out at Wharton, the multipurpose field lighting stands are up and everything. Working with Chop Tank now to get the power extended over to that. It's a 20 years, I can't remember the maintenance time.
20 years.
20 years. Any bulb burns out, they take care of it, they monitor it, everything, so it's a once and done. But obviously, we gotta pay for the electric. And we expect, because now it's lighted, it's gonna become very popular for use, so expect those lights to be on. for that.
I know back in the day, when we used to turn those lights on, they always talked about the cost. I was curious, what does it cost a night or to run those lights, Joe? Do you know approximately?
Oh, what it cost us?
Yes.
I believe it's like $20-some a night.
Okay, well, that's, I mean, I
It's
just,
not-
okay.
Yeah, it's not outrageous.
Yeah,
That's
and-
worth every dime if kids are out there.
That's
It's-
Orem.
it's-
Now, I don't know about what.
Yeah, and
what
Orem, we're
costs.
gonna be upgrading to
They're gonna be
LEDs.
upgraded.
LED, right, exactly.
These are LEDs, so
Right.
multi-purpose, so that'll be a big savings.
Yeah, it's worth every dime
Right, so,
if kids are out there.
yep. The big thing, we wanted to get football practice off the outfield of Orem and onto a multi-purpose field. Because we were getting complaints from the ball field coaches how torn up it is and everything. So we've actually built in the budget some turf management for the outfield. And part of the funding that we've got for some of the LPPI stuff is to restore a grass section, around the pitcher's mound and everything, so that we don't have so much open area in Orem Field. Because it used to be based for the college. Now you've got more grass in there, absorbs more of the water, dries up quicker, all that kind of stuff. So we'll be making
All
some
those
improvements.
improvements, we're liable to have to come out of retirement, Jim.
We could do a charity game, how's that?
That's about what it would be, too, for my hospital bills afterwards.
Okay, general R&M services up there. The pallet forks, Mark has asked for, we get all our paper we purchase through the Board of Ed, so we get a big supply of it, comes in on pallets. So he just has his existing tractor, he wants to get a set of forks, so he can safely lift them off the truck and position them in the storage building. So, and along that line, just, you've seen the improvements we've finally done with the old building, new skinning on it and everything. We got that squared away. Some of the landscaping's going in, which I'm sure Mr. Mason will be happy about, that we're getting that done.
Yeah.
And we're getting proposals for the paving to finish that whole project and get
You
that
have,
done.
I haven't, obviously, I haven't, you do have the new skin on the old building?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you gotta take a look at it. Ryan.
I've
Looks
brought-
good.
Yeah,
Yes.
good. Well, it had to be an improvement. It wasn't, been pretty hard to make it look any worse than what it was when we started.
Fortunately, we had to buy a new fuel tank because we had to move the fuel tank out of the way so to get the skinning on. And the supplier to move it said, you need to replace this thing. It's rusted away, so.
About that.
We, instead of the two of them, we just put one back in, but it's a double wall tank now, so we got that. And then I kept the roll-up doors, because they were working okay. I had Mark paint them, so they looked nicer that way. And then we found out we had to replace one of the posts where the sliding doors went, it rotted completely away, so we had to pay, I think it was $400 more to replace a post in there to keep it supported. So all in all, I think it was a smart move keeping that building, and we talked about all the different options when we did it, and make some use out of it. So it'll be a nice project. We're looking, by the July 1st, we should be all done with it. All right, again, we didn't have much capital, just the pallet forks, so if there's any questions on that. That's our ground maintenance side. And that's that. Okay. Okay. We're exiting.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You'll see him again in a minute. He has a heavy lift.
Caffeine kept you awake?
The seat's really warm.
It is really warm.
Okay. Guess we just need to get the highlights up there. There you go. Okay, so do you want to just jump right into the budget highlights, I guess, here? So we're going to, one of the things that I should touch on a little bit is some of our items really align with some of the other asks you had earlier today. Like for the sheriff's office, for example, when they asked for the cell phones, we fully support that. In fact, both departments came up with that separately. And then in a conversation, we realized we really wanted to apply the same strategy. So there's a reach we're going to ask for, a reach we want to have to reach all county smart devices, especially cell phones, okay? You've heard about the TikTok ban and things like that, right? So in order for us to prevent users from placing things on county-issued devices, smart devices, there's a solution that we're asking for in this budget that aligns with what the sheriff was asking for. So you want to have county data completely separated from personal data, right? And so it's not just the sheriff's office, it's going to be for every other department. Because what could happen is if you have a compromised device, you can get data in the wild, okay? So it means it leaves our control and it's now compromised. And if there's no integrity with the data anymore, then there's no trustworthiness. And I know you know for sure what that means when it comes to investigations and things like that. Well, there's other proprietary data that can be on in Outlook, on people's devices, from finance to planning and zoning. There could be all kinds of things out there. So one of the things that we're going to be asking for this year is mobile device management, which you see listed there. That is to allow us to access these devices. We can lock them, we can wipe them, but what we can do is we can secure the data on them. So that is a big increase this year, but you're going to see that that's pretty much across the board, cybersecurity-wise, it's a mandate. Another thing you're going to see is we will not pass an audit if we don't have, I'll just say, multi-factor authentication, okay? So multi-factor authentication. So you might have it on your personal Gmail account, for example, where you go to log in, and then there's a second step you have to do. It's something you have and something you know, right? So you might have to you might receive a text. You have to put like the 4 digits, 6 digits back in order to fully authenticate and get to your information. That is absolutely standard nowadays. We are not going to pass a security audit if we do not have MFM. So that's another increase in our budget this year, okay? So I would say those two very important things are cybersecurity related, and they're really a must. The other thing is we are also experiencing some inflationary cost increases. So Office 365, which is the backbone for all really information exchange for the county, it's our email, online storage, Teams. There is a cost increase to the licenses this year. So that did drive our budget up a little bit. We also have perimeter defense, which is you have the outside world, then you have our network, right? So you have that perimeter, you have to throw up a defensive shield, firewalls, so forth. We have to upgrade those. Last commission, we instituted that logarithm. I just did that out loud, didn't I?
Seam solution.
Seam solution. I should have said that. Seam solution, which allows us to glean a lot of data, and it parses it for us. For example, I get about 28,000 emails a month, okay? It's humanly incapable of going through all that data. So we have to have, AI systems in place, artificial intelligence systems in place that can really parse all that data, bundle it up, and tell us, like, this is a baseline, this is what things should look like, and this is here's a red flag when things have kind of gone out of control. You might want to look at what's going on, okay? So the new firewalls we're asking for align with that Seam solution, okay? So it allows the two of them to talk to each other much more seamlessly, and it also gives us a second path out. Right now, we currently have one highly secure path, which is through this building, but what we can do is put a second one out at public safety that would allow them to at least act as an island or allow the rest of the network traffic to get out. So we're securing 2 points of entry and exit for the network, in essence. The cloud-based phone system, there's an increase in cost there. In network monitoring, we have an increase because of the pump stations. We're adding the fiber to those, so we need additional network monitoring increase. The capital expenditures, virtualization hardware, that ties back into software subscription. So you have the appliance, and then you have the service associated with the appliance. So you have the on-site device that serves its purpose. In this case, the virtualization hardware is where our virtual servers, so you have servers that aren't physical, but they live inside a physical appliance. So you have multiple servers inside of one appliance instead of the old ways where you'd have a separate appliance for each server. But it does require support. So you'll see that in our operating and our capital, one kind of requires the other, okay? Layer 2 switches, these are end of life, which means they get to a point where there's no longer firmware updates. It doesn't get what it needs in order to satisfactorily protect us from potential hackers. It's a bad year, okay? This is one of those years where about every 5 years this happens to us, where a lot happens all at once. And this is the year where we have to replace the switches, okay? And we already touched on the firewall. But what I'd like to point out, if you look at our forward-looking capital, you'll see that this is a tough year for us, but then we go back down to what is really normal, which is like the $30,000 a year we put aside year after year for the big PC refresh that comes down the road. And next year, I think we have $116,000. increase, but this is an anomaly for us. Where is it? Is it? Oh, that, yeah, it's the backup system. But, here we go, right here. Backup system, and then you'll see, like in 27 and 28, it should be flat back down to the 30,000. So the timing's pretty bad for us. I know it's a bad year for you all, but cybersecurity is really where the focus of the state is right now. I mean, there's multiple, there's legislation that's going to require quite a bit in this coming year. We're spending a lot of time educating ourselves and training ourselves on this new environment. And maybe to go back and touch a little bit on what the warden asked for, where he asked for that new jail management system. One of the key words that they shared was hosted. And when we participated in the specs for that, one of the things I said was we're trying to move to a hybrid environment. So we still have some physical smart devices, physical servers and everything here, and then we're migrating to try and get more to the cloud. Okay, so eventually that's where the industry is really going, to have more cloud-based presence. You can't do it all at once. So that's where we are. It's just a bad year. There's a lot coming at you guys. There's some things that I don't think that we can live without, like multi-factor authentication and the switch upgrades. But what I could offer is that if you are looking for things that could be bought maybe with contingency funds from this year, there may be a few things on this list that we could carve out. But really, the majority of what's here, I don't know that we can live without and pass an audit. I'm sorry, was I talking fast again?
I don't have to apologize.
Like you said, like Ronnie said earlier, you gotta ask for what you think you need.
Right.
And safeguarding the county is important, so.
Yeah.
The other day, we talked about the Wi-Fi for the Tea Party Festival.
Yes,
And maybe working with Chestertown.
yes.
Have you been able to
Yes.
engage a little bit with them?
They already contacted me, and they said that the day after they met with us, they were reporting to their committee, and they were going to ask their committee to work with us and fully support us as much as they could.
Good.
Mhm. Absolutely. Any questions?
No? Not right now.
Okay.
Next time you come in, don't mention gigabytes and all the coming out of the.
Yeah, you only catch about half of what he's saying.
You sound like my wife. She's not interested either.
What he really does, he talks all that stuff to confuse the hell out of us, and he really don't have to do that much to confuse us.
That's what I was Googling. I was just Googling fancy words back there.
He was looking at TikTok.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, April.
Jill, you're back.
Sure, right here. All right, I just wanted to briefly go back and talk about Bayside, the operation expenses. And just so you guys are aware, in 2018, we were averaging 100 people that came down to Bayside Pool. That's for the whole year. 2019, it was 122. In 2022, it was 109. And that's for the whole season. So on the average, we're averaging about 27 people that come and use the pool. There's some days that we actually pay guards to be down there and no one even comes to the pool. So as an operational expense, that might be something you guys might want to think about. What is the operational? You have that, right?
I didn't bring it.
Sorry.
What would be the liability for the county if it was well posted, swim at your own risk?
There's actually, even if you say swim at your own risk, the county would still be liable. That's true in open water as well, if there was a liability issue.
Now, we did go some years and didn't have lifeguards up to Betterton Beach, but I do know that the town has always asked us to please have them if we can. I think the reason we did away with them for a couple of years, because just couldn't get them. It wasn't that we,
Correct.
Right.
And if you look at the cost on there, the salaries and the benefits are all the lifeguards and probably about half of the operating. So it probably costs about $30,000 to run that pool.
that little one in Rockville.
You have a recommendation?
I recommend, because of budgetary reasons, not to open it this season. We can always keep the bathrooms in operation. I mean, I guess, speaking for me.
Just put a new floor in there, so,
Sorry.
yeah.
I don't want to speak for you.
One can be open without the other, is what
Yes,
I was trying to
absolutely.
say.
Yes.
Not whether or not Mike has the capacity.
Yeah.
Put a goldfish pond, maybe.
Would it be worth us maybe reaching out to the Rock Hall Mayor and Council and seeing how they feel about that?
Okay.
What do you all think of that?
If you were to close it up, we would definitely get some complaints about it, because there's some of the few, when, what'd we do? We shut that down, did we close that at a
2
year,
years, I
couple
think.
years? Huh?
Yes.
Because of the pandemic,
Because
it's
of
2 years,
COVID,
right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
20 and
I would
21.
hear about it, why you closing that little pool down, that's the only place we got to go down here, I mean, but you're right, it's not used that much, and there are a certain group of people that like using it once in a while, but
Mhm.
I don't have a I mean, I don't know which way to go, to tell you the truth,
Wouldn't save a whole lot of money just doing it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday or
I
something
think
like
that's
that.
what
all
it
we
is
do it
now.
anyway.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we don't
Yeah,
really.
So then we wouldn't save any.
It's only open Thursday through Sunday.
We
as
cut
far
it
as
back from
lifeguards, yeah, we
till
cut back.
Thursday to
Yeah, yeah.
Sunday, yeah.
Never, okay.
And I guess the bulk of the cost is the chemicals and
Chemicals and the
Electricity.
guards, the lifeguards.
Lifeguards, yeah.
Mhm. The lifeguards is probably the bulk of it. All right, moving on to budget,
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, yes.
You're gonna see here the same thing that you saw in Bayside, where you're just switching some costs from
Mhm.
operations to personnel because of the lifeguards not being on a contract anymore, and we're gonna take them back in-house.
Yeah, so yeah, basically the budget's pretty cut and dry. It's pretty much the same budget as it was the prior year, except for, yes, we are adding the lifeguards back into our budget because we won't outsource our pools anymore to the pool company. As far as operating, rental services, which you see, that's for a van. We want to reinstate our Leaders Club program, which will not be for this summer, of course, will be for next summer. And that is for the cost of basically the van rental that we use to transport the kids around into the community and other of our trips that we take them on. We did have temporary services in there, which will not be in this year's budget, and that was because of all of our vacant positions that we had. We actually hired out a contracted vendor to come help and assist us to cover a lot of the evening hours that we had when we went to our winter hours. Because we were so short-staffed. Aquatics Management Systems contract, of course, was canceled. Recreation supplies, it's seen an increase in that, and that's because pool chemicals have gone up. The last that I've talked to, Chris Wilson, who does a lot of work at our pools, he's saying they're gonna go up like 50% from what they were last year. So there's gonna be a big increase with pool chemicals this year. Liquid chlorine, acid, and then even all the chlorine pucks that we use at our different locations.
That's gonna go up 60%.
50%, yeah.
Probably went up that much last year, too.
Yeah, we just didn't notice it because, right.
I can open my pool up.
And then R&M services, of course, will go up to $8,922, and that's because we'll no longer have the aquatics management system, and it's just basically fixing the little minor things with the R&M services that we'll now need someone to outsource that to. And then we'll end our lifeguard contract, which you can see the budget pretty much stays the same with us getting out of our lifeguard contract and going to us actually doing the lifeguards ourselves.
Our community center, though, the outdoor pool and all the, everything, it's already, it'll be ready to go, you think, this?
We're hoping, yes, absolutely, yeah. The only thing when I say that is we're about half of the lifeguards that we need right now to run and operate all of our pools in the
Okay,
county.
I understand the lifeguard issue,
Yeah.
but the pool itself and the construction and the
Yes,
pump,
yes,
everything
sir.
there is pretty well,
Yes,
in pretty good shape.
yes,
The plastering will be done.
yes, yes.
With your lifeguards,